Former presidential Republican candidate John McCain, current U.S. Senator from Arizona, is he losing his mind? On national television, comparing our president to a dictator? John, can I call you John? John, the lights are on. The elevator's not going all the way to the top. We'll talk about it. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance. Hi, friend. I'm Randall Terry. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Has John McCain lost his mind? Or has he lost his ability to reason? And now, God bless him, he's an old man. Now, while he may be deteriorating intellectually, is he being exploited by the main fake news, formerly known as mainstream news? I'll let you be the judge. In the next segment, we're going to play 1 minute, 40 seconds of an interview between John McCain and Chuck Todd that would be a Saturday Night Live skit. It's so stupid. It's so bad. It would be a skit if it wasn't so sad. And frankly, if it did not show that Senator McCain is possibly, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but maybe in the middle of something happening with the wiring in his brain. I don't know. I'm not trying to be unkind, but he's losing his mind. He's losing his mind, as we're going to see. So, but before we go there, I've been spending the last few days trying to think of a way to present the facts about the American media. The American media being the enemy. Now, there's been a lot of hubbub, as you know, about President Trump saying that the press is not my enemy, they're the enemy of the American people. And is that true? I'm a journalist. Man, I thank God for a free press on a number of levels. I told family members last night that I would be in jail or dead if I lived in certain countries and broadcasted this show. There's certain countries in the world where I would either be imprisoned or I would be killed for the things that I have said on this program. So the having a free press, having the First Amendment is something that I take very personally. However, the question can still be on the table. Namely, is the main fake news the enemy? Now, I want to eliminate our modern day discussion, just set it over here to the side, and I want to discuss various ways in which someone in the press could in fact be an enemy. They could be an enemy of truth. They could be an enemy of justice. They could be an enemy of God himself. And if being an enemy of justice and being an enemy of truth and being an enemy of God, in fact, makes somebody an enemy of the American people or the enemy of any group of people, then we have to discuss that. And there's also the point that the media could be the enemy of a certain group of Americans and not the enemy of another group of Americans. And then it begs the philosophical discussion. If someone is in fact an enemy of God, could they ever be a friend to humanity? In other words, if someone is an enemy of God, I would argue that by definition, like Satan is an enemy of God, that even if someone sells their soul to Satan and thinks that they're a friend of Satan, at the end of the day, Satan is that person's enemy and Satan is going to torment that person in the lake of fire for all eternity. So, I forgive me for spinning into this philosophical discussion. Let's bring it back up a couple of notches and discuss how the press could in fact be the enemy of truth, the enemy of justice, and an enemy of God. But not in today's setting. Let's just go back to, say, 1852. 1852, a journalist in South Carolina. A journalist who covers slave trade. As a journalist. Now that journalist could go to a slave market utilizing, hear me, the freedom of the press. Remember, they had the First Amendment. All right? So what would that freedom of press, what would that journalist cover when he covered a day of buying and selling slaves? Did he cover the buying and selling of slaves in such a way that made him the enemy of justice, the enemy of truth, the enemy of God himself? Please hold the thought. I'll be right back. Don't leave me, please. Have Muslim terrorists hijacked the peaceful religion of Islam? Or is there more to the story? The answer lies in the life of one man, Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Muslim terrorists see themselves inside a 1,400-year-old story, a narrative that focuses on specific events in the life of Muhammad. We are going to look at Muhammad's life using their most sacred literature. We will look at Muhammad at the Battle of Badr. We'll see him deal with those who mock him. We'll see the times when he used deception. We'll witness Muhammad's anti-Semitism. And yes, we will discuss Muhammad and his teachings concerning sex, slavery, and jihad. Friend, if you want to understand Islamic terrorism, get this series today. Welcome back to the program, friend. I'm Randall Terry. I appreciate you joining me. All right, I'm gonna play the John McCain losing his mind in the next segment, all right? Because I've got to finish this point, and I want you to grasp the essence of what I'm saying. And I'm having, to be honest with you, a little bit of difficulty shrinking the amount of words it takes. But maybe if I paint a word picture. So I'm a journalist. I work for my daddy. My daddy owns a newspaper, or my uncle. My uncle owns a newspaper. I'm a journalist. He also owns slaves. Okay? And I'm writing a story. So I show up at the slave market. I've got my pen or my pencil, and I've got my paper, and I begin to write about the story. As the carts rolled up carrying today's goods, that would be the slaves, today's goods for sale, it was a beautiful spring morning. Not a cloud was seen in the sky. The flowers were in full bloom. There were several respectful ladies in the town who were sporting new parasols that had recently arrived from London. Mr. Smith, who runs the local blacksmith shop, was also hawking his goods, specifically a new type of wheel that he guarantees will last longer. The judge, the courthouse was abuzz because of two land disputes that were being settled on this day. The air smelled of the lilacs and other flowers that, as aforementioned, were in full bloom. The auctioneer began with the dropping of his gavel and said, "Who will buy lot 22?" In lot 22 was an exceptionally fair house N-word an exceptionally fair female house N-word who had been brought from a plantation in Georgia where the master had died and she was a part of the estate. I could continue. So is he telling the truth at that point? Sure, he's telling the truth. He told about the courtroom, he talked about the bees, he talked about the flowers, he talked about the beautiful sky and the new parasols. So could somebody accuse him of that being a fake news story? I would argue yes. Because it's not news. That wasn't the news. The news was that there are people who had been kidnapped. Remember, kidnapping is a capital crime, punishable by death, okay? People who had been kidnapped from Africa and sold as slaves in America, their children, their grandchildren, are now being sold, human beings being sold. The fact that he did not write about the scars on the back of the teenage boy who had tried to escape on 3 occasions. The fact that he didn't write about the fact that the exceptionally fair maiden, the female house servant, was carrying with her 2 mulatto children. In other words, her former slave owner had sex with her, or somebody else on the plantation did, because they did that with female slaves back then, and she had 2 fair-skinned children, because she was not just the slave and property, but the sex slave. And Thomas Jefferson had sex with his slave. He had 3 children by her. Okay, this is a fact of history, people. Our 3rd president. Are you hearing me? So this reporter can be telling the truth while he is an enemy of the truth. Because the truth is that they were involved in an abominable, hideous practice. He can be telling the truth in his little story, and it's fake news because he is not the friend of justice. He's not talking about the crimes being committed against these poor slaves. And he can be an enemy of God himself because he is not reporting the ethical dimension of this demonic practice. All right? Now think American newscasters, and I think you see where this is going. Don't go away. When we come back, John McCain. What Would Mohammed Do? Islamic Terrorism Explained is the best movie series documentary ever produced on the life of Muhammad and Islam. How do I know? Because it's what critics are saying. John Moore, radio host and author, said, "I learned more from What Would Mohammed Do about Islam and Islamic terrorism than I've learned from everything I ever read and watched in my entire life." Best-selling author Dr. Bill Warner said, "What Would Mohammed Do is the best movie series, TV production on the life of Muhammad and Islamic terrorism that has ever been produced." Friends, this is what the experts are saying. No one has ever done what we've done. I encourage you to get 1, 2, 4 copies. Call 304-289-3700. That's 304-289-3700, or order it at the address or the website that you see on the screen. Welcome back to the program, friend. We are going to play the clip of John McCain being interviewed by Chuck Todd. And listen to Chuck Todd's question. You almost miss it, where he says, "Dictators get started by tweets like that?" Chuck, are you as crazy as John McCain? All right, here, play it.
I'm curious of your reaction to a tweet that the president sent Friday night. The fake news media, failing New York Times, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. You believe the press is the enemy? Do you believe any group of Americans are the enemy of another group of Americans?
I was talking about the period, as you know, of the New World Order. A fundamental part of that New World Order was a free press. I hate the press. I hate you especially. But the fact is, we need you. We need a free press. We must have it. It's vital. If you want to preserve, I'm very serious now, if you want to preserve democracy as we know it, you have to have a free and many times adversarial press. And without it, I'm afraid that we would lose so much of our individual liberties over time. That's how dictators get started.
That's how dictators get started, with tweets like that?
No, they get started by suppressing a free press. In other words, in consolidation of power, when you look at history, the first thing that dictators do is shut down the press. And I'm not saying that that President Trump is trying to be a dictator. I'm just saying we need to learn the lessons of history.
Senator McCain, I'm going to leave it there. You are a student of history, that's for sure. I always appreciate you sharing your views, no matter how much you hate me. That's all right.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right, so there you have it. Several elements I want to look at. But first of all, dictators don't get started from tweets. All right, that's just, Chuck, come on, you're embarrassing yourself. Again, overpaid, undereducated, that's Chuck Todd. But I digress. Enemy of the American people. Well, in the last segment, if you missed it, if you just joined me, go online, go to our website, and watch the last segment where I explained how a journalist can, in fact, be an enemy of truth, enemy of justice, enemy of God himself, while reporting the news, because it's what they ignore. The issue is, what are they ignoring? What are they twisting? What are they not covering? Yes, John, or Chuck, some group of Americans can be the enemy of another group of Americans. Let's just start with the child killers, okay? Let's start with the child killers. And then we'll proceed from there to the militant homosexuals and the pornographers. Yes, child killers are the enemy of babies in the womb. Without question, they are enemies, mortal enemies. Homosexual activists who have desecrated the sacrament of marriage. They are enemies of American families who love and fear God. They're enemies of the commandments of God. They're enemies of God. God loves them. He tells us to love our enemies. He loves them, but they're still enemies. The pornography industry, poisoning the souls of tens of millions of people. They're the enemy of our souls, people. They're enemies. They're enemies of women. They're enemies of children. Of course, one group of Americans can be the enemies of another group of Americans. This is the type of stupid question. But let's go a step further. John McCain talked about being a dictator and about the need of a free press. There was nothing in Trump's tweet about a free press. There's no indication that Donald Trump wants to do away with the free press. And if he did, you better believe that I would become an adversary of his administration and any attempt to suppress the freedom of the press. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people like Chuck Todd advancing a stupid, false, idiotic, unholy, unrighteous agenda and narrative. That a dictator can start by tweeting. I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't so stupid and so insidious. Because the goal here is to just undermine Trump's credibility. And I'm telling you, people, I'm telling you, friend, it all comes back to child killing and sexual perversion. That's what this is all about. They are child killers, they want to keep abortion, and they have sexual perversion that they want is a matter of public policy and in their private lifestyles. That's what it's about, friends. And so, yes, the press can be the enemy of the American people. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Friend, we have a series that will help you and those you love to have an impact on this country. It's called Insurrecta Nex. That's Latin for revolution against the killing of innocent people. This is the history, the philosophy, and the theology of social revolution in America. We look at the Stamp Act, the Boston Tea Party, the abolition of slavery, the abolition of child labor, women's voting rights, the civil rights movement. All of them have this in common: courage, sacrifice, dedication, and in-your-face tactics and rhetoric. That's one of the reasons that we've been losing the culture wars the last 40 years, is because the bad guys are using these tactics and we aren't. We will send you this 14-part TV series along with these manuals for students, a teacher's facilitator guide for only $40. Go to 304-289-3700, 304-289-3700. Many people who watch this program love it. They want to support us financially, but they really aren't interested in books or tapes. So we've got something for you to wear, something for you to give to your dad or your brother or your brother-in-law. It's a hat. If Donald Trump can do it, why can't we? Protect the unborn. Voice of resistance. If we are going to make America great again, we are going to have to stop the slaughter of unborn babies. So for those of you who enjoy wearing ball caps, those of you who have someone in your life that is a diehard pro-lifer and enjoys wearing a ball cap, you can make a statement for the unborn, you can talk about this television show, and you can help us financially. $25. Call 304-289-3700. That's 304-289-3700. Welcome back to the program, friend. I'm Randall Terry. Thank you for joining me. One of my ongoing problems in life, okay, this is a personal confession here. One of my ongoing problems in life is that I am ahead of the curve. It just happens repeatedly. And then I get labeled as a lunatic. So I went head to head with some very powerful Republican people in the early 2000s in mid 2000s, because they were supporting Arnold Schwarzenegger instead of Tom McClintock for the governor of California. Now, this is ancient history, but at the time, what I was saying was the Republican establishment is the enemy. It's not just the Democrats, it's the Republican establishment. And these are child killers. These are people who have caved into the militant homosexuals. These are people who are socialists every bit as much as the Democrats are socialists. And at the time, people said I was nuts. And now, this entire election was based upon the fact that the average Republican voter figured out that the Republican establishment was, in fact, a big part of the problem. And they, too, are the enemy of reform when it comes to border control, the threat of Islam, ending child killing, defunding Planned Parenthood, getting a better trade deal with China, and holding China responsible for brutally murdering 20 million human beings a year with forced abortion. All right, so, and our own blood shedding in America. So if you start to look like, wow, yeah, you know, I was right. I was right in the 2000s. And this happens on a regular basis. I won't give you the laundry list because this really isn't a boo-hoo. This is I've been saying that the press is the enemy for decades, okay? For decades. I showed Dan Rather a dead baby. Dan Rather, the journalist, the CBS hero, clown, whatever you want to call him. He interviewed me for 60 minutes too, one-on-one interview. And when he was done, I brought out a dead baby and showed it to him. And I said, when you were in Vietnam, you covered the truth of what was going on. And it impacted public policy. I said, show these babies. Show the American public the truth. I had a baby, 19-week-old baby that was pulled out of a dumpster. An intact human baby that ultimately got a proper burial, by the way. He didn't show the baby on TV. He was a liar by his neglect. So is the main fake news the enemy of the American people? Maybe not all the American people. You know, if you're a communist, no, they're not your enemy. If you're a baby killer, they're not your enemy. If you want homosexual marriage, they're not your enemy. Okay, but if you want righteousness and justice, of course they're your enemy. You know, it's almost funny. There was a big story headlined on Drudge about an MTV reporter who protested against Donald Trump, who participated in a protest. I'm like, and what's your point? Of course he protested against Donald Trump. Of course he's not an unbiased journalist. Look at Don Lemon. Don Lemon, that black guy on CNN who was yelling at another black guy, the other black guy said, this is all fake news, Don. Don was outraged. He actually cut the whole interview short, took his earpiece off and got up and left the set. Don Lemon did. Because he didn't want somebody saying that this is fake news. You're covering how much money it costs the Secret Service to take care of Trump's kids? Okay, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. We all accept it. We accept it for Chelsea Clinton. We accept it for Obama's kids. It's life. They're trying to make this hubbub where no hubbub exists, and that's the issue. So if you like what you're watching here, what we bring to the table, yeah, I'm an activist, and I'm a journalist, and I'm a Christian. And we're trying to bring you the news from a Christ-centered perspective, a Bible-based perspective, a historic Christian perspective, Orthodox perspective. That's the goal. I have an agenda. You betcha I do, and it's right here in front of you. If you like this agenda, stay with us. Go to our website. Look at all the stuff you can get there for free. If you want to support the program, buy some of our books, tapes, videos. Buy the What Muhammad Do series. Give us a call. 304-289-3700. There's an operator standing by. One. We'll see you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.